We continue to get you ready for the start of the 2024 season as week one is getting closer and closer and closer. We'll do that on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. And as always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, you know we appreciate that. The show continues to grow each and every day. That's because of your support and because of the job my man Ari does. Fantastic work behind the scenes, making sure we're on YouTube each and every day. Takes a lot of pride in his work, and we definitely appreciate that. So we shout out Ari. He's on Twitter at Ari Producers. You can hit him up there. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. Normally we have your calls and texts in segment number 3, but today instead on segment 2 and 3, you'll actually hear the preview conversation I had with Matt George from ABC 10 in Sacramento, California. Big ups to Sacramento. I'm a big fan of Sacramento. Matt George is also the host of Locked On Kings. He does a fantastic job with both, but I had an opportunity to be on the news there in Sacramento doing a little bit of a Raiders preview, so I thought that was pretty awesome. So you'll hear that conversation with Matt George coming up in segment number 2 and segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Here in segment 1, just news and notes, again, getting you closer and closer to the start of the NFL season, and Raiders and Chargers. Excited about that. So we'll jump right into it after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. So as it is week one, and we're starting to learn what the procedures are going to be. I talked about already what it's going to be like here on the podcast, where we review the game Monday and Tuesday, whatever game that just happened, we review that. Then we start diving into the next opponent on Wednesday. We have the crossover edition coming up on Thursday, and then I'll give you keys to victory on Friday. That's going to be what we do here on the podcast. But we also found out on Monday, on Labor Day, and hopefully everyone had a really good, enjoyable, relaxing Labor Day, knowing that, hey, it's go now. It's go time. Full throttle, right? I say it all the time. It's you know, the kiss your wife and tell the kids you'll see him after the Super Bowl, because it is football season. But we found out on Monday from the Raiders, they passed on the information of what we can expect as far as when we get to talk to Antonio Pierce, what the schedule is going to usually look like on a usual game week, and then also, you know, when different coordinators are going to be made available. So starting on Wednesday, Antonio Pierce and the coordinators will be before practice around 11:40 a.m. Pacific time. And then AP will go and actually talk to the media on Wednesday and Fridays, and the coordinators will talk on Thursday. So Antonio Pierce meets with the media Wednesday and Friday. It's going to be before practice gets started, so it'll be about 11:40 in the morning Pacific time. So that's when you could expect to hear from the head coach. Practice will begin at 12:20, and then locker room and media availability be around 2 o'clock, 2:15. Now, the only problem with the locker room media availability at 2 and 2:15, I can't be there. I can't be there because I have my radio show, Unnecessary Roughness, on Raider Nation Radio 920. I have that I'll be doing at 2 o'clock, so there's no way that I'll be able to be in the locker room throughout the course of the week. Now, obviously, game days, on home game days, I'll always be in the locker room, which is fantastic. I always like to get that locker room action and let you hear what the players have to say, and, of course, I'll bring that back to the podcast as well. But as far as during the week, I won't be able to do that. Now, a lot of times, my guy Vinny Bonsignore will actually send me some sound that he gets from the locker room, so I can either play it on the radio, the podcast, or both. So we will have some of that throughout the course of the week, but it won't be any that I collect because, again, I'll be on the radio at that time. And then Antonio Pierce will do his Monday presser at 11 a.m. So following the games on Sunday, the head coach always talks to the media the very next day. So on, again, a normal game week, Antonio Pierce will meet with the media around 11 a.m. on Monday. So when he does when the Raiders play that Black Friday game against Kansas City, he'll do that presser on Saturday morning. So we'll meet with them around 11 a.m. that next Saturday. They have a Monday night football game as well against the Falcons. So everything will just be, pushed up. So the game will be on Monday, and then he'll do his press conference on Tuesday. So that's just kind of getting you up to date on what to expect and when to expect it from the head coach and his coordinators, and even the players, and a little bit of a practice schedule as well. Maxx Crosby, I wanted to pass this nugget along to you here in segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast news and notes. Maxx Crosby has a league-leading 323 pressures since 2020. No other edge defender has more than 293. Think about that. That's how dominant that dude has been since 2020. He has a league-leading 323 pressures. No other edge defender has more than 293. And I'm just excited to see what it's going to look like this year. I think with the addition of Christian Wilkins, Maxx Crosby is going to eat. Right. And then there's going to be someone else is going to be able to eat as well, because then you know that they're going to shift all their attention to Maxx Crosby because they don't want him to wreck the game like he likes to do, like he did all training camp long, wrecked all the practices. Christian Wilkins obviously is that big body. He's going to have a lot of attention. That's also going to free up someone else. So I expect Maxx Crosby to have a phenomenal season like he does each and every year. But I'm really interested in what the guy across from him is going to do. And I'm expecting that guy to be Malcolm Kuntz throughout the course of the year. He had 8 sacks last year and 3 forced fumbles. They were all post November 1st. I'm expecting him to have double-digit sacks and probably not even on the low end. I'm thinking, anywhere between 12 and 15 sacks for Malcolm Kuntz. I just think that he's going to have such an opportunity and have so much one-on-one time that he's going to be able to get to the quarterback early and often. Max is always going to get doubled no matter what. And then with Christian Wilkins being out there, he's going to be able to, draw so much attention and not allow the quarterback to step up into the pocket. That's going to be the key to the Raiders' defensive success. And, of course, that's one of the big storylines that we'll be talking about throughout the course of the week leading up to this game against the Chargers is the defense, the expectations for them. Can they live up to the hype? That'll definitely be something we talk about. But with Wilkins being able to be that big dude in the middle and not allow the quarterback to step up into the pocket, that's going to give guys like Max and Malcolm Kuntz a lot of an opportunity to eat. So that's just a big-time tip of the cap right there to Maxx Crosby. Again, league-leading 323 pressures since 2020. No other edge defender has more than 293. Obviously, I'd like to say he has the league-leading sacks since 2020, right? But pressures are really good as well, and it helps the guys on the back end. The more pressures you get, the more mistakes the quarterback's tending to make, and then that's a guy like Jack Jones or Jacorian Bennett or Trayvon Merrick, Marcus Epps, even Robert Spillane, the linebackers. They all have opportunities to make plays when cornerbacks start to, they start to panic and make bad decisions. So the pressures help. I would love to say that he has a league-leading 323 sacks, right? We know that's not obviously realistic, right? But, it is what it is. Pressures are really good, and it obviously helps the defense in a major way. So look for Maxx Crosby to get a lot more pressures and a lot more sacks coming up in 2024. My final little nugget, it's just very little. It was great to see football, Monday Night Football action. It was college football, obviously, because the NFL's not back, not till Thursday when Kansas City takes on Baltimore. But having Labor Day off, being able to watch a little Monday Night Football action, I didn't have to do any radio shows. It was awesome to be able to sit around and relax. And I saw Florida State drop to 0-2 on the season. They went to Ireland. They lost to Georgia Tech. Okay, maybe you can make up a reason why that happened. But Boston College gave them the business. Boston College, led by Bill O'Brien now, he's their head coach. They gave them the business. They won 26-13, right? I've talked about quarterbacks before. Some people like it, some people don't like it that I'm talking about quarterbacks. That's fine. I'm going to continue to do what I do and continue to watch college football. And guys that stand out to me, I'm going to talk about. I'll tell you what, DJU from Florida State, he ain't it, right? He is not it. Guys that stand out to me in a good way, guys that stand out to me in a bad way. And so far through 2 games at Florida State, DJU has not been that guy. He went from Clemson to, where did he go up to? Oregon State and then Florida State. I just don't see him as a very good quarterback, period. It doesn't seem like he has any confidence at all. And I guess Florida State's going to go as far as he takes them. And I don't think they're going to take him, or he's going to take them very far, as they are 0-2 on the season. They started out the season ranked 10th across the country. They will not be ranked 10th much longer. But that's the final little nugget I have for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Coming up with segment number 2, part 1 of my conversation with Matt George from ABC 10 KXTV in Sacramento, talking all things Raiders, little Raiders season preview. You'll hear part 1 of our conversation next here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. I know you have. It's America's #1 sportsbook. One more time. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. They're America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little bit different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. So any Raider game that you want to see, if you are not in the Las Vegas market, no worries. You can check it out. YouTube TV, YouTube, NFL Sunday Ticket, all by just placing a $5 bet with FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com. Download America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to jump into part 1 of the conversation I had talking about the Raiders, doing a little season preview with my guy Matt George from ABC 10 KXTV in Sacramento. This actually aired on TV in Sacramento on Sunday night, so I just wanted to bring this conversation to the table and thought it was a really good conversation, especially coming off the Labor Day weekend. Thought that, okay, maybe if you didn't check out Labor Day show, kind of get a little double dip, so you're getting extra today. Maybe you're getting caught up on all the podcasts on today. But let's go ahead and jump into part 1 of the conversation I had with Matt George. He's also a host of Locked On Kings, does a fantastic job with that. But this was all about Sacramento. This was about the news channel, and this was all about the Raiders. Check it out.
The long-anticipated wait is over. NFL football returns next week, and of course, that means the return of Las Vegas Raiders football. The last NFL game to be played in Allegiant Stadium wasn't even a Raiders game. We know it as the Super Bowl. So the Raiders looking forward to taking their territory back, and it's a new year and a lot of changes, as well as kind of same old in some kind of way. But instead of us breaking it down here, we're going to bring in one of the guys who's in Las Vegas on the ground, locked in to the Raiders coverage. And I use locked in specifically because he's the host of Locked On Raiders. Q Myers, aka your boy Q, nice enough to join us here to fill us in on what's going on with the Raiders. Q, another season for the silver and black. Every year it just feels like, whether it's the division or the league in general, just things get tougher and tougher and tougher. But the Raiders are right there and kind of on a teeter-totter of, are they going to make a lot of noise, or is this going to be another disappointing season? If you're leaning either way, where are you feeling with this Raiders group and the optimism right now?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm just happy that we're back to football. We're back to an actual regular season week, regular season games, and no more preseason, no more training camp. It's all about actual action that's going to happen on the field. Wins and losses all matter. With that being said, when it comes to the Raiders in this year, man, I mean, it's one of those. It feels like it's a kind of a test of what's going to happen in the first few weeks of the team, right? I mean, because we all know all offseason long, all summer, all training camp, preseason, they've been in a quarterback competition. Who's the quarterback going to be, Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell? Neither one of those guys are elite quarterbacks. I mean, we would be lying to ourselves if we said that they were. So what are they going to do? Gardner Minshew won the starting quarterback job because Antonio Pierce said that he needs someone to start games hot and also start the season hot. He needs someone to really take a hold of the first quarter of the season, which is the first 4 games. And look, they've got the Chargers and the Ravens on the road. They've got the Browns and they've got the Panthers and the Browns at home. And so it's like that's a tough 4 games, and it's going to tell you a lot about this team. But there's a lot of optimism around them right now. The defense looks like it's going to be really good, and that's without the contributions of Tyree Wilson, last year's number 7 overall pick. He's really kind of slow to the party, but the defense, based off what they did at the end of last season, looked really good. So there's a ton of optimism there. The question is always going to be the offense and how much can they contribute, and it's always going to go back to the quarterbacks because, well, it's the National Football League and it's a quarterback league.
Vibes were high with Antonio Pierce's takeover last season, and we heard all these stories about how much the players love playing for him. You saw the videos in the locker room after wins of the scars being lit and the party and happening. And I'm not expecting that the vibe around Antonio Pierce is going to change necessarily now that he's been upgraded to the legitimate head coach of the Raiders, not the interim head coach. But has that kind of worn off, or will that wear off quickly? You think the love and appreciation for Antonio Pierce as a player's coach, if the wins don't start piling up too, or do you think he has a grace period in Las Vegas to figure some things out?
No, the honeymoon's over. It's over. I mean, that was fun last year. Like you mentioned, the cigars, getting the culture back to the Raider way, and all that was good and needed. I mean, let me tell you, it was needed. I would go to the facility every day, and I didn't know how bad it really was until McDaniels was let go, and then AP was put as the head coach. It was like night and day. So it was needed in a major way for not only the players, but that whole building. But with all that being said, you know what this is. I mean, this league is about wins and losses. What can you do for me? What have you done for me lately? And he knows that as well. That was fun last year. The last 9 games, that was great. A nice ride. That ride is over. Now it's about wins and losses. So now, I don't know what Mark Davis's expectations are. Like, I don't know what they've sat down in private conversations and said, okay, this is what we're expecting this year, next year, and the third. But I know that this team needs to find ways to win games. And it's not going to be easy. They're doing it their own way, which is defense-led, and then, the offense is going to be complementary, where a lot of teams are trying to load up on offense and try to, outshoot Kansas City, outshoot all the really good teams in the AFC like Baltimore and the Cincinnati Bengals and the Buffalo Bills. But they're trying to do it by way of the defense. So that's fine if it works, right? And it's funny, I saw some Raider fans, even during the preseason, when you didn't see the execution the way that Raider Nation thought it should be. It was like, well, Antonio Pierce is maybe not that good of a head coach. I was like, wait, that's the same guy you were just cheering for last season. But that just gives you the perfect example of how quickly things change. Like, it's great. You're going to root for this guy right now, but you're not rooting for him afterwards if he's not winning. So, yeah, it's very important that this team comes out to a hot start and wins games immediately. If not, then all of a sudden you're going to start hearing about why did they hire Antonio Pierce? They could have gone after Jim Harbaugh, and that's going to be a conversation that nobody wants to talk about.
Expectations are a funny thing. You said you're not 100% sure what Mark Davis's expectations are with the Raiders. I think there's always the whole slogan, the commitment to excellence. There's always an expectation of competitiveness at the very least. But what are your personal expectations for this team? I don't think anybody, and being in Vegas, I don't think anybody would put the Raiders anywhere close to a betting favorite to win the division with Kansas City still existing. But making the playoffs via a wild card spot, actually making some noise in the division and threatening Kansas City a little bit. What are the expectations for Las Vegas realistically, you think, this year?
In my mind, expectations are you've got to be a playoff team. You've got to be at least fighting and contending for the playoffs, because it's been so long. Since the last time they were in the Super Bowl and they lost, they've been to the playoffs twice. So it's, what are you doing? And so I know that it's going to be a tough road to travel down. Kansas City, like you said, they've won the division 8 years in a row. So you know how good they are, but at some point somebody's got to challenge for that. And I'm not saying the Raiders are going to challenge for that this year, but they've got to be there. They got to be at the end of the season. They've got to be there competing for the division, or they got to be competing at least for a playoff spot, I should say. That's probably the better way to put it. And look, they were in contention for a playoff spot up until week 17 a year ago. And so I'm thinking, with all the mess that they went through last year with hiring their coach, firing their coach, getting AP and Champ Kelly as the interim GM, naming Aiden O'Connell a rookie, the starting quarterback. If you can navigate all that and find a way to get to 8 wins, I think you should be at least there. And I know that Vegas has them at 6.5 wins this year, and that's very low, but they've gone over their win-loss total 3 out of the last 4 seasons. So I think that they can go over that, but it's like, how far over that are you going to go? When I went through the schedule, I said, okay, I see 9 to 10 wins here. But that's if everything goes correctly for them. So that's what my expectations are, and that might be a little rich, and that's okay, but I'm tired of covering a team that's not going to the playoffs consistently. And at some point, what are you doing? So that's my thoughts, and it's going to be tough. The quarterbacks are not elite, as I mentioned before, and so they're guys that are good. They've proven that they can win games, but it's almost like everything's got to go right for them. So we'll see, but I think that you have to be there trying to get to about double-digit wins, around 10. And even if you fall short, you get 9 and you don't make the playoffs, at least you had 9 wins. You had a better than a 500 record. And if you get to 10 wins and you miss the playoffs, okay, because it's happened. A double-digit win team didn't make the playoffs, fine, but you showed improvement. It's got to be right around there. 9, 10 wins for this season have to be the expectation. If that doesn't happen, then there's going to be more questions being asked in the offseason. So there's part 1 of the conversation I had with Matt George from ABC 10 KXTV in Sacramento. I always say how much I'm a big fan of Sacramento, one of my favorite cities. Got a lot of family that lives in Sacramento, so shout out to Sacramento, California. When Matt hit me and was like, hey, man, you want to come on and do a Raiders preview? I was like, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. Definitely want to do that. So you'll hear part 2 of that conversation coming up in segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. We'll do that next. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about a couple great sponsors here on the Locked On Raiders podcast, including the title sponsor, which is Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. They filter out all the fluff, right? So you can get all the incredible deals. You don't have to waste a lot of time searching through a bunch of stupid stuff, stuff that you don't want to be a part of. It just gets right to the point, gets you right to your tickets that you want. As a matter of fact, they have all kind of great different features on the app. They have all kind of features like They have the priority game time picks. They have the seat views, the lowest price guarantee, game time ticket coverage. They have everything. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticket industry. Game time will credit 110% of your difference if you find lower tickets. And the seat views is always going to be my favorite feature that they have on the app. You actually get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy your tickets. So when you arrive at wherever venue you're at, if you're not familiar with it, sometimes you could buy some tickets and then end up disappointed. This way, you won't end up disappointed. You'll see the seats. You'll know that, okay, this is going to be a good spot for me and my family or me and my friends or whatever the case may be. It's a good spot to check out the game or whatever the event is. It's not exclusive to just games. You can go to theater. You can go to concerts. You can go to all kind of different events with Game Time. All you got to do is download the Game Time app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create the account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. I also want to tell you about another great sponsor here on the Locked On Raiders podcast, which is BetterHelp. And, sometimes you would like to learn something, right? We used to at one point have a desire to always learn something. That was probably when we were a lot younger. But sometimes when you start to get a little bit older, you start to lose that desire of learning something. Kids are always learning, growing, but as adults, we lose that curiosity. So what's something that you've actually want to learn or thought about learning? Maybe it's something as simple as doing yard work, maybe doing it a little bit better. Maybe it's learning a new language, or maybe how to finally beat your best friend in bowling, right? Or anything. It could be any kind of, learned skill, like maybe even, balancing a checkbook or doing something that is, financially related. Well, therapy can help you reconnect your sense of wonder because your back to school era can come at any age. If you're thinking of starting therapy, you should give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you got to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched up with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp. BetterHelp.com/LockedOn. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Time to jump into part 2 of my conversation with Matt George from ABC 10 KXTV in Sacramento, California. Just continuing to talk about the Raiders. Talked about the quarterbacks, talking about Devontae Adams, talking about, Antonio Pierce, and now the honeymoon period is over. Just all states of the Raiders as he was trying to get all his folks there in Sacramento prepared for an upcoming Raiders football season. And he let me know that, hey, this is something that we're going to do quite a bit throughout the course of the season as well. So definitely be having you on multiple times. So look forward to that. Definitely check out Matt George if you're a basketball fan. He hosts Locked On Kings as well. He does a fantastic job with that. But it's all about the Raiders here. So let's jump into part 2 of my conversation with Matt George. This was from Sunday.
I had a conversation with a couple of Raider fans here in Sacramento when training camp opened, and it was the Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell conversation. And the point that we ultimately got to was, what's the point? Like, what is the point? Are these guys placeholders? Like,
right.
Are the Las Vegas Raiders just kind of looking at the quarterback position just to tread water? They're trying to be as competitive as possible and win right now, obviously, as much as they can. But I don't think anybody believes that you can really win or feel confident about making a Super Bowl run or winning it all with either of those two guys as your quarterback. So you trying to make the playoffs and end up with a late first round pick and use that late first rounder on a franchise quarterback of the future. Like, when you think about the future of the quarterback position in Las Vegas, I'll ask the question, like, what's the point of what they're doing right now?
Yeah, it's funny. It's a hard like bill to sell because there's a conversation of, well, just do really bad, get an early draft pick and get your quarterback. And that was the conversation even last year when AP took over as the interim. I had a lot of Raider fans hitting me up saying we should not be winning any games, right? And I was like, wait, AP can't keep the job if he doesn't win games. And so, but it was like, yeah, but you're not going to get the quarterback that you want. And Jaden Daniels was the guy that the Raiders wanted. AP has a great relationship with him going back to Arizona State. And he, openly said that he wanted to go find a way to get him. It just wasn't happening. They were there picking at number 13. Jaden Daniels went number 2. Washington wasn't going to trade him. So they have to find their quarterback of the future. That's no matter what happens this season. If they make the playoffs, if they miss the playoffs, they have to find their quarterback of the future. It's not Gardner Minshew. It's not Aiden O'Connell. It's got to be other. And I think there's been conversations of could that be Dak Prescott by way of free agency if he does hit the free agent open market, or is that a draft pick? Personally, I'd rather it be a draft pick. I think that Dak Prescott and making $60 million a year is going to compromise the rest of your team. So for me, it's, okay, go out there, draft your guy, and then build around him. So, as college football is already ramped up, I'm scouring, I'm watching, I'm scouting for, what quarterback I think would fit best, without trying to talk about the draft already, right? So it's just it's a fine line to kind of toe, but that's what it is, man. I mean, because you have to have that guy. Look at the Texans, right? They weren't expected to be anything, but they found their quarterback, and once they got their quarterback, they went and won the division and even had a playoff victory. So you can all of a sudden be a big time player if you have your quarterback. So the Raiders, their job, no matter what happens this year, if they make the playoffs, if they fall short of the playoffs, if they make a playoff run and go deep, it doesn't matter. You have to find your quarterback of the future. It's not Gardner Minshew, and in my opinion, it's not Aiden O'Connell either.
Is Devontae Adams looking around asking the same question? Like, guys, what's the point? What are we doing here? I mean, it's an absolute bona fide star, but if there's an element of the Raiders right now that to some people doesn't make sense, it's, what is Devontae doing there with what this team is trying to do? It made sense when he joined the Raiders to play with his buddy Derek Carr. We know how short-lived that was.
Right.
So is Devontae looking around thinking, what's the point? Or do you think he's bought into AP and everything they're doing?
I think he's bought in. I know he's bought in. But with that being said, I think the first 4 games of the season are going to really tell a lot. I think when you see this Raiders team go out there and operate in the first 4 weeks, if they go 1-3, I think there's a good chance that Devontae's out of here. Right? I mean, it's just that simple. The trade deadline is not till week 10. They pushed it back, so it's around November 3rd. That's the Raiders' 9th game of the season against the Bengals, and then that goes into week 10. So that's when the trade deadline is, November 5th this year. So I think that he could be moved if the Raiders get off to a bad start. If all of a sudden, Minshew's out there and, they go 2-2 or they even go 3-1, who knows? They go 3-1, they win a game that's not expected for them to win. Then all of a sudden I think Devontae's feeling good, especially if he's part of the offense and he's doing something. But if they go 1-3 and he hasn't put up too many, yards and he's not getting the ball and it's inconsistent quarterback play, I think that he probably will and should, say, hey, this isn't working, right? I'm getting a little bit older. I want to have an opportunity to win games. Send me somewhere where I have a chance. And then on top of that, I think that it would be smart for the Raiders to do that anyway, just so they could put themselves in position to go get that quarterback that we talked about already. Because I do think, regardless, they're going to win more than 6.5 games. So they're going to be picking in the draft around, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. If they only end up around 7 or 8 wins, that's not going to get you that top quarterback. Right? We saw that. We saw 6 quarterbacks go in the top 12 this past year. So I think if things don't get off to the start that they wanted to, and Devontae says, hey, this isn't working for me, I need to get out of here, I think the Raiders would make sure that he does get to where he wants to go, and they get some good draft capital in return so they can flip it and make sure that they get their quarterback of the future.
Final question for you, Q. As you very well know, it's not too often that Raiders fans, Raider Nation, can go into a season to go, oh, we're riding on the backs of our defense this year. It's our defense that's got us. That's been a consistent issue with the silver and black for a long time. You got Mad Maxx Crosby there in the middle, who's turned into an absolute superstar, really the face of the organization, at least in my opinion. Tell me about that Raider defense. What is it about the defensive side of the ball that is giving Antonio Pierce so much confidence, is giving Raider Nation so much confidence? How capable is the Raider defense to put this team on their back and carry them to a postseason appearance?
That's the expectations this year for sure, right? And look, I've been a Raider fan. I've been covering the Raiders for my whole life. I've never seen a team where it's like, okay, the defense is going to lead this team. Never. Mm-hmm. So it's been a very long time, but Maxx Crosby, Christian Wilkins, Malcolm Kuntz came on late last year, 8 sacks and 3 forced fumbles post November 1st. Like, I mean, he really showed what he can do. Jack Jones was a great waiver pickup at the cornerback position, had 2 pick sixes, when they finally got him into the mix. Nate Hobbs is a guy who's always been consistently a really good corner. Jacorian Bennett's a younger guy, second-year dude, but in training camp looked great. I think this defense is really going to be good. Robert Spillane was a guy that everyone said, all he could do is stop the run from the linebacker position when he was in Pittsburgh, and all he did was tie the Raiders with the lead in interceptions last year. So I think that this defense has an opportunity to be really good. Special. Right? I mean, we know what Maxx Crosby is going to do, but everyone else, I think, is really going to step up and play a big role, and that's what gives this team hope. Again, the quarterback position, the offense, you don't know what you're going to get. But I do believe with this defense in the third year under Patrick Graham, the defensive coordinator, it's going to be special. And I honestly believe that it's going to be so special, Patrick Graham will probably be a head coach somewhere next year. I don't think he's going to be a Raiders defensive coordinator long because he's been able to put this defense together. So they're definitely going to lead this squad, but they got some special players there. They really do. And it's not even that they're like top 10 guys. It's just that they all work together really well. And they all come together. Like Marcus Epps, he's not a guy that's going to show up on the stat sheet. You're never going to see some outlandish stats from Marcus Epps. But he lines up everyone from the safety position, the linebackers, the defensive line, corners. He gets everybody lined up and lets them know what he's seeing from the back end. And he's a special player. He's made Trayvon Merrick better. This defense is going to be special. And it's the first time in a very, very long time that I've had an opportunity to say that.
Well, if you're looking for your Raider fix and Raider coverage all season long, look no further than Q and Locked On Raiders. I appreciate you making the time, Q. Good luck this season. Have some fun over there in Las Vegas, and hopefully we're seeing the silver and black in the playoffs again soon.
So there it is. There it was right there. That's the whole meal deal thing. Conversation with Matt George from ABC 10 KXTV in Sacramento that aired on TV on Sunday night. Matter of fact, if you saw it, go ahead and shout it out, man. Let me know about it. 707-654-4693. That's the Locked On Raider Podcast voicemail line. Let me know what you thought about it. Maybe answer some of the questions that Matt had for me. Maybe if you have a different answer or you look at the schedule and the upcoming season a little bit differently, definitely hit me up. Don't hesitate to let me know about it. I definitely would appreciate hearing from you. So again, 707-654-4693. We will get back to your calls and texts coming up on tomorrow's show. We'll have plenty of news and notes as we start to get really prepared and start to dive in to this Raiders team this upcoming season. And of course, the Chargers. We'll have the crossover edition with David Drogemeyer. I've actually already been in contact with him, so we're setting up a time to make sure we can get that collaboration all down and get to go. And so you'll know exactly what to expect from the Chargers by after Thursday, because we'll have that podcast on Thursday. And and then we'll talk about keys to victory on Friday. So I'm pretty pumped up, man. I'm pretty excited. It feels like it's been gone for a long time, but it really hasn't, right? It went by super quick, fast, and in a hurry as far as I'm concerned, and now we're here again. So 18 weeks, 17 games is guaranteed, and the Raiders can earn the postseason. They've got to go out there and do it by their actions. So hopefully that's what they do, but it's only one game at a time, and this week it is the Chargers. So we'll be back here tomorrow giving you everything that you need to know to get you prepared for week 1 action. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.